The siege of Zentara Prime began at dawn on the third day of humanity's war against the Galactic Council. Admiral Susan Grant stood on the bridge of her new flagship Retribution, watching as 200 human vessels emerged from faster-than-light space around the massive ring world. The station that had once symbolized galactic cooperation would now witness its final destruction. "All vessels report ready for assault operations," reported Captain Danny Cruz from his position at the tactical station. Cruz had been promoted after his actions during the Hope's Dawn evacuation, and now he commanded the fleet's heavy weapons division. His dark eyes studied the sensor displays with professional intensity as he tracked defensive movements around the ring world. Grant activated the fleet-wide communication system. "This is Admiral Grant to all vessels. Zentara Prime houses the council government that ordered the massacre of 50,000 civilians. Today, we end their ability to threaten any species ever again. Execute Operation Final Word, the attack." Began with precision that would have impressed the council's military theorists if any had survived to observe it. Human vessels moved in coordinated formations that avoided the ring world's defensive fire while systematically eliminating its weapon platforms. Prometheus devices converted massive defense installations into pure energy, leaving gaps in the station's protective grid. On Zentara Prime, emergency alarms wailed through corridors that had never known warfare. Council representatives from 9 species huddled in the secure command center while their military advisors tried to coordinate a defense against attackers who seemed to exist outside the normal rules of space combat. "Human vessels are maintaining position at 70,000 kilometers, reported Admiral Sektar of the remaining Kethmore forces. "They are systematically destroying our defensive installations but have not targeted civilian areas." General Mordak activated his communication device with trembling claws. "The humans are giving us a choice. Surrender the station and live, or continue fighting and die with it." Logic Prime 7 processed the tactical data and reached an inevitable conclusion. "Probability of successful defense, 0%. Recommended action, immediate evacuation of all personnel." High Representative Nelsara of the Tethvan government stood at the center of the command chamber, her pale blue skin even paler than usual. As the senior council member present, the decision fell to her. Around her, beings who had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years waited for orders that would determine their fate. "Send a message to the human fleet," she decided. "We request terms for surrender." The response came within minutes, transmitted directly to every communication system on the station. Admiral Grant's image appeared on screens throughout Zentara Prime, her expression showing no emotion as she delivered humanity's final judgment. "There are no terms," Grant announced. "You will evacuate all personnel from Zentara Prime within 6 hours. Any being remaining on the station after that time will be considered a military target. This is your only warning." The evacuation began immediately as beings from 9 different species crowded into transport vessels and escape pods. The station that had housed millions now emptied as its population fled before humanity's advancing fleet. Some tried to destroy important records or equipment before leaving, but human boarding parties had already secured the most critical areas. Admiral Sarah Blake commanded the human assault on the Zelthron homeworld from her flagship Justice Delivered. The planet below was home to 12 billion Zelthrons, but Blake's target was not the civilian population. Her orders were specific: eliminate all military and industrial capabilities while avoiding unnecessary civilian casualties. "Initiate planetary bombardment sequence," Blake ordered. Target only military installations and industrial facilities. Scan all targets twice before firing to confirm no civilian presence. The bombardment was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Prometheus weapons struck from orbit with surgical precision, eliminating military bases and weapons factories without touching nearby civilian areas. Zelthron defenders tried to respond, but their weapons could not reach the human vessels operating, beyond their range. General Mordak's personal bunker was the last military facility to fall. The underground complex had been designed to survive planet-killing weapons, but Prometheus devices operated on principles that made traditional defenses useless. The bunker simply ceased to exist, converted to energy along with its occupant and all records of Zelthron military operations. Similar scenes played out across 8 other star systems as humanity's fleets systematically dismantled the Council's military power. The Kethmore Collective watched their industrial complexes disappear one by one. The Tethavan Empire's shipyards became clouds of dissipating energy. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia found themselves reduced to helpless observers of their own destruction. Captain Luke Stevens led the assault on the Council's main military academy, a space station where officers from all member species had trained for centuries. The facility housed 50,000 students and instructors, but Stevens had orders to capture rather than destroy educational institutions. "This is Captain Stevens of the Earth Defense Force," he announced, over the station's communication system. "You have 10 minutes to surrender and evacuate all personnel. This facility will be captured intact for use by the new Galactic Administration." The Academy's commandant, a Zelthron general named Velthak, responded with traditional military pride. "We will never surrender to inferior species who cannot understand the proper order of galactic civilization." Stevens checked his chronometer and nodded to his weapons officer. "Target the station's military training areas. Leave the libraries and classrooms intact." The Prometheus weapons eliminated the Academy's weapons ranges, tactical simulation centers, and military equipment while leaving educational facilities untouched. Within minutes, the station's capacity to train military officers was gone, but its knowledge remained for future use by species who understood cooperation rather than domination. On Earth, President Coleman monitored the progress of humanity's fleets from the secure command center beneath the Pacific Ocean. Status reports arrived every few minutes as human forces completed their assigned missions across Council space. The plan was working with precision that surprised even its architects. "Zentara Prime evacuation is complete," reported General Phillips. "Admiral Grant is preparing to destroy the station's government facilities while preserving the civilian habitat areas. Zelthron military capabilities have been eliminated," added Colonel Davis. "Admiral Blake reports no remaining organized resistance in their home system." Coleman studied the strategic display showing human fleet positions throughout former Council space. Red markers indicated destroyed military targets, while green markers showed captured facilities and protected civilian areas. The pattern showed systematic destruction of war-making capability combined with careful protection of non-combatants. "What is our casualty count?" Coleman asked. "Remarkably low," Phillips replied. "Fewer than 300 human personnel lost, mostly to accidents during high-speed operations. Enemy casualties are estimated at 2 million military personnel and perhaps 50,000 civilians in areas we could not evacuate in time." The numbers would have shocked the old Coleman, the man who had believed in peaceful coexistence with the Council. But hope's dawn had changed him along with the rest of humanity. The species that had come to the stars seeking friendship had learned to speak the galaxy's true language, with devastating fluency. The final destruction of Zentara Prime took place at exactly 1800 hours Galactic Standard Time. Admiral Grant's fleet moved to safe distance as Prometheus weapons systematically eliminated the station's government complex, military command centers, and industrial facilities. The ring world's civilian habitats were left intact, but its capacity to govern or threaten other species was removed forever. "Target destroyed," reported Captain Cruz as the last government building converted to energy. "Zentara Prime is no longer capable of military or administrative functions." Grant nodded and activated the fleet communication system. "All vessels, this is Admiral Grant. Operation Final Word is complete. The Galactic Council no longer exists as a military or political entity. Begin Phase 2 operations." Phase 2 was different from the systematic destruction that had come before. Human fleets moved to former Council worlds not as conquerors, but as administrators. Surviving civilian populations found themselves under human protection, with basics, services maintained, and essential infrastructure preserved. The transformation was swift and comprehensive. Species that had ruled others for centuries now found themselves governed by the junior species they had tried to eliminate. Human administrators worked with surviving alien civilians to maintain order and ensure that basic needs were met. Dr. Ashley Morgan established research stations on former Council worlds to study their technologies and incorporate useful discoveries into human systems. The same scientific cooperation that had been destroyed at Hope's Dawn now continued under human protection, but with different rules about who could participate. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defender and looked out at the stars. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Kepler Station, and the memory still burned in his mind like acid. Humanity had lost that day, lost badly, and the alien coalition had been pushing them back ever since. The insectoid Velcarti, the reptilian Krillians, and the mysterious energy beings called the Collective had formed an alliance that seemed unstoppable. The human colonies were running out of time, supplies, and hope. Morrison commanded what remained of the Terran defense fleet from his aging battleship, but every day brought news of another human outpost falling to alien forces. The politicians back on Earth were talking about evacuation plans and last stands, words that made Morrison's stomach turn. Dr. Lisa Carter walked onto the bridge carrying a data pad, her face showing the same exhaustion that everyone felt these days. She had been studying alien behavior patterns for years, trying to understand how their enemies thought and fought. Her work had saved human lives more than once, but even she seemed to be running out of answers. "Any word from the outer colonies?" Morrison asked without turning from the viewport. "New Brisbane went dark 3 hours ago," Carter replied, her voice quiet. "That makes 7 colonies lost this month alone." Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. New Brisbane had been home to 2 million people, farmers and miners who had built lives on that distant world. Now they were gone, either dead or enslaved by the alien coalition. The Admiral had stopped counting the losses weeks ago because the numbers made it impossible to sleep. Lieutenant Sam Taylor looked up from his communications station, his young face pale with disbelief. "Admiral, you need to hear this," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "We have an incoming transmission from a Velcarti ship." Morrison turned sharply. In all the months of war, the aliens had never tried to communicate with humans except to demand surrender. Their ships had always attacked on sight, showing no interest in talking or negotiating. The fact that they were sending a message now could mean anything, none of it good. "Put it through," Morrison ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the insectoid features of a Velcarti ambassador. The creature had 4 arms, compound eyes that reflected light like black mirrors, and mandibles that clicked when it spoke. Morrison had seen enough of these aliens in battle recordings to recognize the diplomatic markings on its carapace. "Human commander," the alien said, its voice translated by the ship's computer into flat, emotionless words. "I am Ambassador Zekthara of the Velcarti High Council. I come bearing an offer of peace." Morrison felt Dr. Carter tense beside him. The word peace seemed impossible, like hearing someone claim the stars had turned green. For months, the coalition had been pushing forward with relentless aggression, showing no mercy and accepting no surrender, except total submission. "What kind of peace?" Morrison asked carefully. "A complete ceasefire," Zekthara replied. "An end to hostilities between our peoples. The coalition wishes to negotiate a permanent treaty that will benefit both humans and our alliance." The bridge fell silent, except for the quiet hum of ship systems. Morrison could feel his crew staring at the screen in shock and disbelief. After everything that had happened, after all the colonies lost and lives destroyed, the aliens were offering to stop fighting. Dr. Carter stepped forward, her scientific mind already working on the problem. "Ambassador, why now? Your forces have been winning on every front. What has changed?" The alien's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "War is costly for all involved, human scientist. The coalition has decided that cooperation will serve our interests better than continued conflict. We offer not just peace, but partnership." Morrison felt a cold suspicion growing in his chest. He had been fighting aliens long enough to know. They did not think like humans. They did not show mercy or change their minds without good reason. If the coalition was offering peace now, it was because they wanted something that they could not take by force. "What are your terms?" Morrison asked. "The details will be discussed at a formal summit," Zekthara replied. "We propose to meet at Meridian Prime, a neutral world where representatives from all species can gather safely. The coalition is prepared to offer territorial sovereignty for human space, technology sharing agreements, and even reparations for war damages." Carter's eyes widened. Those terms were not just generous. They were almost too good to be true. No conquering force in galactic history had ever offered such favorable conditions to a defeated enemy. Morrison could see the same thought reflected in the faces of his bridge crew. "We will need time to consider this offer," Morrison said. "Of course," the alien ambassador replied. "But do not delay too long. The coalition's patience has limits, and there are those among us who prefer military solutions to diplomatic ones." The D. Transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Morrison turned to look at his officers, seeing hope and suspicion warring in their expressions. Captain Ben Parker, the Defender's commanding officer, was frowning at his tactical displays. Commander Amy Rodriguez, head of Special Operations, looked like she was already planning for the worst-case scenario. "It's a trap," Dr. Carter said quietly. "It has to be." "What makes you so sure?" Morrison asked, though he shared her suspicions. Carter pulled up her data pad, showing charts and graphs that meant nothing to most people, but everything to someone who studied alien psychology. Velcarti behavioral patterns show they never negotiate from a position of strength. They are hierarchical predators who view compromise as weakness. The fact that they are offering peace talks now, when they are winning, goes against everything we know about their species. Lieutenant Taylor cleared his throat nervously. "Admiral, I've been monitoring alien communications since the transmission ended. There's been a massive spike in encrypted traffic between coalition ships. Far more than normal diplomatic chatter would require." Morrison nodded grimly. His instincts were screaming that this was some kind of elaborate trick, but he also knew that humanity was running out of options. The human government back on Earth was desperate enough to try anything, even if it meant walking into an obvious trap. "Sam, get me a secure line to Fleet Command," Morrison ordered. "Lisa, I want a full analysis of every word that alien said, every gesture, every pause. Ben, start running quiet preparations for a worst-case scenario. Amy, brief your special ops teams on potential infiltration and extraction protocols." As his officers moved to carry out their orders, Morrison stood alone at the viewport, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, the alien coalition was planning something, and he was certain it was not the peaceful future they were promising. But humanity had survived this long by being stubborn, resourceful, and willing to fight even when the odds seemed impossible. If the aliens wanted to play games, Morrison would make sure humanity was ready to play along. But they would do it, on their own terms, with their own plans, and their own surprises. The Admiral smiled grimly as he began to formulate contingency protocols that might just give the coalition more than they bargained for. The war was far from over, and Jake Morrison intended to make sure humanity had the last word. The Unity Festival had been planned for months as a celebration of cooperation between the three junior species. Hope's Dawn Station sparkled with decorative lights as beings from Earth, the Vethani worlds, and Merdal systems gathered to share their cultures and achievements. Children from all three species played together in the station's recreation areas, while their parents displayed art, music, and technology that showed how much they had accomplished working together. Admiral Susan Grant watched the celebration from the bridge of her flagship Liberty's Edge. Her fleet of 12 human vessels maintained a protective formation around Hope's Dawn Station, far enough away to avoid disrupting the festival, but close enough to respond to any threats. Grant was a career military officer with 20 years of experience, but she had never faced a situation like this one. Intelligence reports suggested an attack was coming, but the evidence was circumstantial, and she couldn't justify aggressive action based on suspicion alone. "Admiral, we're detecting multiple fleet signatures approaching from the Zelthran sector," reported Lieutenant Commander Tony Walsh from his position at the tactical station. Walsh was young but capable, someone who had earned his rank through skill rather than connections. His dark hair was regulation short, and his brown eyes stayed focused on his scanner displays. Grant moved to look over his shoulder at the sensor. Readings. 12 Zelthran warships were approaching Hope's Dawn at standard diplomatic speed. Behind them came 8 Kethmore vessels and formations from 5 other senior council species. It was the largest gathering of senior species military power Grant had ever seen. "Are they responding to our festival invitation?" she asked, though something in her gut said the answer was no. Communications Officer Rebecca Stone spoke up from her station. "Admiral, they're broadcasting diplomatic codes and requesting permission to attend the Unity Festival. All proper protocols are being followed." Grant felt torn between duty and instinct. The approaching fleets were following correct procedures, but they were also bringing enough firepower to destroy Hope's Dawn 10 times over. She had to assume they were here for the festival as announced, but every military instinct she possessed screamed that something was wrong. "Signal the fleet to maintain current positions but bring all weapons to standby power," she ordered. "If they're here for a party, we'll welcome them. If they're here for something else, we'll be ready." On Hope's Dawn Station, Captain Jake Morrison moved through the cultural center where the main festival events were taking place. The large chamber had been divided into sections showcasing each species' achievements. Human musicians played alongside, Vethani energy artists who created complex light sculptures. Myrdal biotechnicians demonstrated living tools that grew and changed before the fascinated audience. Crystal Song of Dawn stood near the center of the room, her crystalline form glowing with happiness. She had worked harder than anyone to organize this festival, believing it would show the galaxy that the three junior species could accomplish amazing things when they worked together. Around her, children from all three worlds played games that required cooperation between different types of beings. "This is beautiful," Ambassador Knox said as he joined Morrison near the main display. "Look at how naturally they work together. The children don't even think about the differences between species." Morrison nodded, but his attention was divided between the celebration and the tactical updates flowing through his earpiece. Admiral Grant's fleet was tracking incoming vessels from the senior council members, and something about the situation felt wrong. The timing was too convenient, and the number of ships was far too large for a simple festival attendance. Flowing Current Bright approached them, his aquatic suit allowing him to move freely among the air-breathing species. His bioluminescent patches were bright with excitement as he gestured toward a display of Myrdal biotechnology. Current of Deep Wisdom has developed a new form of living metal that responds to thought patterns, he explained through his suit's translator. Combined with Vethani energy manipulation and human engineering principles, we believe it could revolutionize spacecraft construction. Knox smiled at the enthusiasm in the alien's voice. "That's exactly the kind of breakthrough that proves junior species belong in the Council. When can we begin production testing? Dr. Clark believes we could have a prototype within 6 months, Flowing Current Bright replied. "The applications are limitless." Morrison's earpiece crackled with an urgent message from Admiral Grant. The approaching fleets had reached the edge of the system and were requesting detailed approach vectors to Hope's Dawn Station. Their formation was precise and military, not the casual arrangement expected for festival attendees. "Excuse me," Morrison said to Knox and Flowing Current Bright. "I need to check on station security." He walked quickly toward the command center, passing groups of celebrating beings who had no idea of the potential danger approaching. In the corridors, Morrison saw human children playing with young Vethani, whose crystal forms sparkled with laughter. Myrdal juveniles swam in portable tanks, while their new friends from other species tried to communicate through simple light patterns. The station's command center was busy with normal festival operations when Morrison arrived. Security Chief Linda Parker looked up from her displays with a professional smile, but Morrison could see the tension in her eyes. "Status report," he requested. 47 ships from Senior Council species requesting festival attendance, Parker replied. "They're following all proper protocols, but the numbers don't match previous RSVPs. We were expecting maybe 12 ships total, not 47. Morrison felt his stomach tighten. "Any explanation for the discrepancy?" "They claim it's a last-minute show of support for junior species cooperation," Parker said, "but Admiral Grant's tactical analysis suggests it's enough firepower to sterilize this entire system." Before Morrison could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red, and automated systems announced a general alert condition. Through the command center's main window, Morrison could see distant flashes of light that meant only one thing: weapons fire. "All senior species fleets have dropped diplomatic transponders and opened fire on Hope's Dawn," Parker reported with professional calm that didn't hide her shock. Admiral Grant's fleet is moving to engage, but they're outnumbered 4-1. Morrison activated the station's internal communications system. All personnel, this is not a drill. We are under attack by Council forces. Proceed immediately to emergency stations and prepare for evacuation procedures. In the cultural center, the festival atmosphere changed instantly to chaos as beings from 3 species tried to understand what was happening. Crystal Song of Dawn stood frozen in the center of the room as the lights around her shifted from celebration colors to the deep red of emergency status. The first weapon's impact hit Hope's Dawn 30 seconds later. The station shuddered as energy beams designed to destroy battleships struck its civilian hull. Sections that had been filled with laughter and music suddenly became twisted metal and escaping atmosphere. Morrison ran back toward the cultural center, but another impact threw him against a corridor wall. Emergency bulkheads began sealing automatically, cutting off sections of the station to prevent total decompression. Through his earpiece, he could hear Admiral Grant coordinating the defense of the station while her outnumbered fleet fought, desperately against overwhelming odds. Liberty's edge to Hope's dawn. Grant's voice came through clearly, despite the battle raging around her. We're taking heavy casualties, but we'll hold them as long as possible. Begin evacuation immediately. Morrison reached the cultural center to find Ambassador Knox organizing evacuation efforts. Humans, Vethani, and Myrdal worked together to help the injured and guide children toward the escape pods. But the station was designed for research, not warfare, and the evacuation systems were inadequate for the number of beings aboard. Crystal Song of Dawn stood near the main display, her form flickering as she tried to use her energy manipulation abilities to reinforce the station's structural supports. Morrison could see the strain the effort was causing her, but she continued working even as debris fell around her. You need to get to an escape pod, Morrison told her. The children must escape first, she replied, her voice growing weaker as she maintained her efforts. The structure will hold a few more minutes if I can keep the power flowing to life support. Another impact shook the station violently. This time Morrison could hear the distinctive sound of hull breach as atmosphere rushed out through damaged sections. Emergency systems triggered throughout the station, sealing compartments and rerouting power to critical systems. Lieutenant Commander Walsh's voice came through Morrison's earpiece. Captain, the Rising Sun is moving to dock with Hope's Dawn for emergency evacuation. We can take 300 civilians before we have to withdraw. Morrison coordinated with Knox and the other leaders to prioritize the evacuation. Children went first, then injured civilians, then essential personnel. The process was orderly despite the chaos, showing how well the 3 species had learned to work together. 6 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council, and Ambassador Peter Knox was beginning to understand that politics among the stars was just as complicated as politics on Earth. He sat in the council chambers, a vast circular room with seats for representatives from all 12 member species. The morning session had started with routine trade disputes, but the mood had grown tense as the day progressed. High Commander Veltar of the Zelthron Empire stood at the central podium, his reptilian features twisted in what humans had learned was anger. The Zelthrons were one of the oldest council members, and they believed age gave them the right to control everyone else. Veltar's scales were dark green with gold markings that showed his high rank, and his yellow eyes fixed on Knox with obvious dislike. The junior species continue to hoard their discoveries, Veltar said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation system. The new faster-than-light technology should belong to all council members, not just the three races who claim to have found it. Knox kept his expression neutral, though inside he felt frustrated. The research station project had been going well, for months. Humans, Vethani, and Merdal scientists worked together studying an ancient derelict ship found in dead space. 3 weeks ago, they had made a breakthrough that could change space travel forever. The discovery promised to make faster-than-light travel cheaper and more efficient than anything the Council currently used. Logic Prime 7 of the Kethmore Collective activated its speaking device. The Kethmore were machine-like beings who thought in pure mathematics and cold logic. They never showed emotion, which somehow made them more frightening than the obviously angry Zelthrans. Probability analysis indicates the Junior Species Alliance poses a threat to established Council hierarchy, the machine voice announced. New technology distribution should follow established protocols under senior member oversight. Crystal Song of Dawn rose from the Vethani section, her crystalline form catching the chamber's lights. The research was conducted jointly by 3 species in neutral space using shared resources. Council law clearly states that such discoveries belong to the participating members. Council law can be changed, Veltar replied coldly. If the senior members vote together, we have more than enough support to require technology sharing under expanded protocols. Knox finally stood, drawing attention from around the chamber. He had learned to speak carefully in these sessions, since every word would be analyzed by diplomats from 12 different worlds. Earth supports the current research protocols, he said formally. The 3 participating species have shared their individual technologies and expertise freely with each other. The results belong to all 3, and any sharing beyond that group should be voluntary, not mandated. A low hiss came from the Zelthron section, while clicks and buzzes indicated displeasure from several other senior member groups. Knox sat down, knowing he had just made powerful enemies, but unwilling to back down from principle. After the session ended, Knox walked back to the human quarters with a heavy feeling in his chest. The corridor seemed longer than usual, and he noticed that beings from the senior species avoided making eye contact with him. Only Crystal Song of Dawn and Flowing Current Bright approached him as he reached Section 12. The senior members grow more hostile each day, Crystal Song of Dawn observed, her voice carrying harmonics that suggested worry. Flowing Current Bright's suit translated rapid light flickers. Our intelligence sources suggest private meetings between the Zelthran, Kethmore, and at least 5 other senior species. They do not invite observers. Knox nodded grimly. I'll share this with our intelligence officer. Earth has been monitoring communications, but it's difficult to intercept transmissions between species with different technologies. Back in the human section, Knox found Intelligence Officer Maria Santos waiting in his office. She was a small woman with dark hair and intense brown eyes, someone who noticed details that others missed. Santos had been Earth's top analyst before volunteering for the Deep Space Program, and she had spent months learning to read alien behavior patterns. "We need to talk," Santos said without preamble. "I've been analyzing communication patterns and meeting schedules for the past month. The senior species are coordinating their activities in ways that suggest something big is being planned." Knox settled behind his desk and activated the room's privacy screens. "What kind of coordination?" Santos pulled out a portable display and projected holographic charts into the air between them. "Look at these meeting patterns. 7 of the 9 senior species have been holding private sessions every 3 days. The meetings last exactly 2 hours and always include military advisors. Could be routine security briefings," Knox suggested, though he didn't believe it himself. That's what I thought until I cross-referenced the timing with fleet movements, Santos continued. She changed the display to show ship positions throughout Council space. Senior species military vessels have been conducting training exercises near all 3 junior species territories. The exercises are supposedly unrelated, but the timing is too convenient to be coincidence. Knox studied the patterns and felt his stomach tighten. The exercises formed a rough triangle around human, Vethani, and Myrdal space. Any one of them could be explained as routine, but together they looked like preparation for something more serious. "Have you shared this with Captain Morrison?" Knox asked. "He's already adjusting our ship positions based on my recommendations," Santos replied. "But, sir, there's something else. I've been monitoring quantum communication channels used by the senior species, and yesterday I picked up fragments of a coded transmission." She changed the display again, showing lines of alien text with partial translations below. "My language programs can only translate about 30%, but the key words are clear enough. Junior species problem, technology threat, and final solution." Knox felt cold despite the room's comfortable temperature. Final solution had terrible historical meaning for humans, and it probably meant something equally bad in galactic politics. "What do you recommend?" he asked. Santos deactivated her display and looked directly at him. "We need to warn the Vethani and Myrdal immediately. Whatever the senior species are planning, it's going to happen soon. The fleet movements suggest they're almost in position." Knox nodded and activated his secure communication system. Within minutes, he had arranged a private meeting with Crystal Song of Dawn and Flowing Current Bright for that evening. The meeting would take place in the research station's conference room, officially to discuss their latest discoveries, but actually to share intelligence about the growing threat. That night, the 3 species representatives gathered in the station's secure chamber. Dr. Ryan Clark was there representing the human science team, along with Crystal Harmony of Mind, from the Vethani and Current of Deep Wisdom from the Myrdal. The room was shielded against electronic surveillance, one of the few places on Zentara Prime where they could speak freely. "The situation is worse than we thought," Knox began, and Santos presented her analysis to the group. The alien representatives listened with growing concern as she explained the fleet movements and intercepted communications. Crystal Song of Dawn's light patterns shifted to deep blue, which humans had learned indicated serious worry. "The Vethani have noticed increased scanner sweeps of our home system. We assumed it was routine council monitoring, but now we understand the true purpose." Flowing Current Bright's patches flickered rapidly. "Myrdal intelligence reports similar. Activities around our worlds. Military vessels conducting surveys of our defensive capabilities and industrial centers." Dr. Clark leaned forward, his face pale. "Are they planning to attack us?" "The evidence suggests they're preparing for some kind of action against all 3 junior species," Santos replied. "Whether that means economic sanctions, forced technology transfer, or something more direct, I can't determine from the available intelligence." Knox felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Earth had sent him here to build relationships and advance human interests, not to navigate a potential war between junior and senior council members. "What are our options?" he asked. Crystal Harmony of Mind spoke in the musical tones of her people. "The Vethani fleet is small but mobile. We could evacuate our research teams and return to home space within days." Current of Deep Wisdom's translation followed quickly. "Myrdal vessels are fewer but well defended. Our biotechnology gives us advantages in defensive warfare." Knox considered the options. Running away would save lives, but would also abandon their research and destroy any chance of full council membership. Fighting was impossible given the numbers involved. Earth's fleet was the largest of the three junior species, but even combined, they couldn't match the senior members' military power. "There's a third option," Dr. Clark said quietly. "We could accelerate the research and complete the FTL breakthrough. If we can prove the technology works and offer to share it freely, the senior members might back down." Santos shook her head. "My analysis suggests they've already decided we're too dangerous to keep around. Offering them our technology won't—" The confrontation reached its climax when Captain Lynn Mitchell took command of the flagship Eternity's Edge and moved it to the center of the alien formation. The massive vessel appeared among the Council fleets without warning and immediately demonstrated capabilities that redefined what was possible in space warfare. The ship created protective barriers around human colonies by manipulating the fabric of space itself while simultaneously isolating aggressive alien vessels in temporal fields that froze them in time. The alien commanders found themselves facing an enemy that could be everywhere at once while remaining untouchable by conventional weapons. The human ships did not simply outgun the Council fleets, but operated according to principles that made traditional naval tactics meaningless. They could appear behind enemy lines, strike with devastating force, and disappear before return fire. Could be coordinated. Chancellor Crixtall realized that his forces were completely outmatched when three of his battle groups found themselves trapped in space that folded back on itself. The ships could fire their weapons, but the energy beams curved around through dimensions and struck their own vessels instead of their targets. The humans had turned physics itself into a weapon that made resistance impossible. High Arbiter Zelnoth attempted to rally the Council fleets for a coordinated assault, but discovered that the human ships were disrupting communications between alien vessels. Each fleet element found itself isolated and unable to coordinate with other units. The ancient human technology included systems that could selectively interfere with specific types of communication while leaving others untouched. Captain Mitchell opened communication channels with the alien commanders and spoke from the bridge of a ship that was larger and more advanced than anything they had ever seen. Her voice carried the confidence of someone who held overwhelming advantages and the wisdom of someone who chose to use power responsibly. Council Fleet Commanders, this is Captain Lynn Mitchell of the human vessel Eternity's Edge. Your forces are currently contained within spatial barriers that prevent movement or offensive action. This containment is not intended as an attack, but as a demonstration of capabilities that we hoped would never need to be revealed. The alien leaders were forced to acknowledge that they were facing a species whose true nature they had completely misunderstood. The humans had not been expanding aggressively into alien territory, but had been slowly reclaiming space that had belonged to their ancestors for thousands of years. Every human colony sat on a site that had been marked by the original civilization as strategically important. General Chris Lopez oversaw the establishment of new defensive perimeters around human space, using technologies that had been waiting underground for millennia. The ancient installations could project protective fields across entire star systems and create barriers that were impervious to any known form of attack. Human territory was now effectively immune to conventional assault. Dr. Nina Scott began the careful process of integrating ancient technology with modern human systems. The knowledge contained in the old ships included scientific principles that could revolutionize everything from medicine to manufacturing. But the integration had to be done carefully to avoid overwhelming current human society with changes that were too rapid to absorb. Admiral Hart negotiated with the council leaders from a position of strength that transformed the entire diplomatic situation. The aliens were no longer dealing with a junior member species that needed their approval, but with representatives of a civilization that predated most of galactic society. The balance of power had shifted completely and permanently. The Reptilian Confederation was the first to formally acknowledge the new reality and requested permission to withdraw their forces from human space. Their commander admitted that his species had misunderstood humanity's nature and apologized for the aggressive actions that had triggered the current crisis. The Reptilians offered to establish new treaties based on mutual respect rather than alien superiority. Commander Alex Turner used the Temporal Sovereign to escort alien fleets away from human territory while ensuring that no hostile actions could be taken against human colonies during the withdrawal. The ancient ship systems could monitor thousands of vessels simultaneously and respond instantly to any threat. The aliens found themselves under protection that was both absolute and completely beyond their ability to challenge. The Ethereal Collective sent envoys to negotiate new agreements that recognized humanity's true status in galactic civilization. The gas beings admitted that their sensors had detected unusual energy patterns around human space for decades, but had dismissed them as natural phenomena. They now understood that they had been observing the signatures of technology that was far more advanced than their own. Dr. Rachel Brooks discovered that the ancient human civilization had left detailed instructions for the integration of their technology with modern society. The prehistoric engineers had anticipated that their descendants would eventually need to reveal their inheritance and had prepared guidelines for managing the transition. The process was designed to preserve human culture while providing access to capabilities that could ensure survival. Captain Ben Parker coordinated with other ship commanders to demonstrate human capabilities to alien observers without causing permanent damage or loss of life. The ancient fleet could have destroyed the Council forces within minutes, but chose instead to show restraint that proved humanity's commitment to peaceful coexistence when possible. The Zephyrian Chancellor finally acknowledged defeat and formally withdrew all territorial claims against human space. Krixtal admitted that his species had made fundamental errors in assessing human capabilities and requested new negotiations based on accurate information rather than flawed intelligence. The insects offered to share their own advanced technologies as part of new cooperative agreements. The Verdanian plant delegates were amazed to discover that ancient humans had developed agricultural technologies that could transform entire planets into garden worlds within decades. The prehistoric civilization had mastered biological engineering on scales that made current terraforming efforts look primitive. The plants requested access to these technologies in exchange for their own knowledge about ecosystem management. Captain Mitchell established communication protocols that allowed the ancient fleet to coordinate with modern human forces while maintaining the secrecy that had protected them for thousands of years. The old ships would remain hidden most of the time, but would be ready to emerge whenever humanity faced existential threats. The galaxy would know that humans possessed ultimate deterrent capabilities without having those capabilities constantly visible. The Vorthak crystalline beings were forced to recalculate their understanding of galactic history when they realized that human civilization was older than their own records. The crystals had considered themselves among the most ancient species, but now faced evidence that humans had been exploring space, while Vorthak society was still developing basic technology. General Lopez received reports from around the galaxy, confirming that human colonies were revealing defensive installations that had been hidden for centuries. Each settlement was protected by systems that could repel any known form of attack while remaining invisible to sensors until activated. The network of defenses made human space impregnable to conventional assault. Dr. Scott made breakthrough discoveries about the relationship between the ancient human civilization and the species that had threatened them originally. According to the records, the extragalactic enemies had been defeated not through military action, but through the development of technologies that made their invasion impossible to sustain. The ancient humans had won by becoming untouchable rather than by destroying their enemies. The crisis ended not with a battle, but with a revelation that changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about human nature. The species that other races had considered young and weak were revealed to be the inheritors of a legacy that predated galactic civilization itself. The ancient fleet would return to its hidden dimensions, but its brief appearance had established humanity's place among the stars permanently. Admiral Hart delivered her final message to the Council from the bridge of Terra's voice, while surrounded by evidence of human capabilities that had been concealed for millennia. Honored Council members, humanity has always been willing to coexist peacefully with other species. We have never sought dominance over others, but we will never again accept limitations imposed by those who misunderstand our nature. The galaxy entered a new era where humanity was recognized as an ancient civilization that had chosen patience over aggression and wisdom over force. The Hidden Fleet remained ready to protect human interests while allowing normal diplomatic and commercial relations to continue. The balance of power had been restored to reflect the true capabilities of all species, rather than the assumptions that had guided galactic politics for centuries. The ancient engineers' plan had succeeded across thousands of years. Their descendants would never again face extinction alone, and would never be forced to surrender their sovereignty to species who mistook